I also want to thank Prime Minister Netanyahu for agreeing to the plan. If accepted by Hamas, this proposal calls for the release of all remaining hostages immediately, but in no case more than 72 hours.
Let's go to Jerusalem now and speak to Bloomberg's Dan Williams. Dan, it was feted as a major milestone speech, press conference by both President Trump and the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. Netanyahu saying that he signed on to this 20-point plan. First of all, what is exactly in the plan? Talk us through what's in the proposal.
Writ large, the conditions here are very similar to what we've heard set by Israel, which would be effectively a surrender by Hamas, an immediate return of the 48 hostages still held by Hamas, and a ceding by Hamas of what remains of its governance in the Gaza Strip, an exit of its leadership into exile, and presumably an amnesty for lower order members who would be absorbed back into the Palestinian community. Why is this different? Well, the US president has mustered the full force of his ego, of his clout, of his charisma, and he's also mobilized leaders of major Muslim and Arab countries. These are regional stakeholders who are in support of this plan. So this is meant not just to set out again those conditions for Hamas to effectively yield the ground and yield in this war to capitulate, but also to remind it that it is now effectively isolated in the region from powers which perhaps in the past might have sided with it or straddled the fence and signaled that it might be able to continue fighting.
How significant is it that just prior to this press conference taking place, the Qataris put out a statement saying that a phone call had taken place between the Israeli Prime Minister and the Qatari Prime Minister, with Israel extending an olive branch of some sort, expressing deep regret over the Qatar attack, and the Qataris frame it as an apology on behalf of the Israelis. How significant in the run-up to this 20-point proposal was that instance?
Well, it's crucial because, like Israel, Qatar is a U.S. ally. It was, however, outraged by a September 9th attack by Israel on the senior Hamas delegation hosted in the Qatari capital, an attack apparently intended to kill that leadership and expedite Israeli victory in this war, an attack that apparently failed to achieve that, but did kill a Qatari officer, a security officer, who was at the scene. Now, for this to work, it was pretty clear that the U.S. president needed both those countries on side. They're not friendly, Qatar and Israel. They have cooperated in the past, but there's been a good deal of recrimination over this war, given Qatar's relationship with Hamas, although, of course, that's made Qatar indispensable in mediating between Israel and Hamas. For that mediation to continue, and mediation in this case meant effectively to persuade Hamas to surrender. There's still a stage of negotiation there in terms of the framework, the modalities of a surrender, which would take days or weeks, one imagines, once agreed. Qatar really needed to have a face-saving gesture by the Israelis. It's worth remembering here that the phrasing is deliberately different. Qatar has called this an apology. The Israelis and the White House readout has described it as a voicing of regret. A voicing of regret is not quite an apology. It doesn't have the same, it doesn't connote moral culpability and acceptance of moral culpability. And I think that's something Netanyahu really needed here, given Israeli anger at the fact that Qatar ever hosted a group like Hamas on its turf.